Let's get into our review of the week. This week's review is a game called Architects of the West Kingdom. It is designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. They are mostly known for their North Sea trilogy, which includes Raiders of the North Sea, Explorers of the North Sea, and Shipwrights of the North Sea. They now have a new trilogy coming, of which this is the first. They sort of do these Euro trilogies of games. This one is all going to have Blank of the West Kingdom. Architects is the first one. Paladins of the West Kingdom already was on Kickstarter and did very successfully on that and will be coming out later this year. Shem Phillips is from New Zealand, and he has his own publishing company called Garphill Games, and they make all of these games that we just mentioned. The artist that does all these games is Mihalo Dimitrievsky, and I apologize in advance for butchering that. I'm going to read you a little bit from Board Game Geek about it, and then we will discuss. Architects of the West Kingdom is set at the end of the Carolingian Empire, circa 850 AD. As royal architects, players compete to impress their king and maintain their noble status by constructing various landmarks throughout his newly appointed domain. Players need to collect raw materials, hire apprentices, and keep a watchful eye on their workforce. These are treacherous times, and rival architects will stop at nothing to slow your progress. Will you remain virtuous or be found in the company of thieves and black marketeers? Tell us about this game. If you were pitching this game to someone who never heard it before, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as it's a worker placement game. Mm-hmm. You're getting various resources to build. You're building either personal individual cards that you draw from a deck and that you have in hand, or this communal cathedral that could be built in. But there's a race component there, and to get the maximum points, only one person can get the maximum points to build in the cathedral.
Or we'll just say it plays 1 to 5 players, and they say roughly 60 to 80 minutes.
Yeah. And I think it plays, when everybody knows what they're doing, the game actually plays as pretty quick turns,
it's not
which
long.
is nice.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that you could play this and something else that night, which we did.
Yep. I really enjoy the game. My AKA could be the binge gamer, right? Because I'm one of those people who I realize that once I find a game that I like, I will just play it obsessively. I'll get it to the table every time. And I discovered Architects, I don't know, a couple cons ago, so maybe 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think it came out at around the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So it feels about right, about 5 or 6 months. And, just really enjoyed it right off the bat. Again, it's got resources in it, so I love collecting resources.
Well, and tell us about the worker placement aspect is actually unusual.
Yeah. So you get kind of slightly different stuff depending on which space you go to. So there's kind of like this component where you get certain spots are a little bit richer, but I think the main thing though is that there's a component where the more meeples you put on a particular spot, the more resources you get. And so every time you go there, you add a meeple, you get one more thing. Now your opponents though have a mechanic where they can actually capture your guys and take them off the board.
Right.
And that's this kind of and so there's a take that component to that, which a lot of people don't like. I think it's a really interesting way to solve. I can kind of see that come out of the design process where they're like, okay, well, you can't keep having, your guys on these spots because then you'll get, 10 wood or 10 stone or whatever. So how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah.
And I could see how they design that in, and I think it's really satisfying. It's one of those things where, because you can, as the player who captures, you can get a reward from it. I don't feel like it's actually terrible for the play. Like if you're the player who gets your meeples captured, because you run out of meeples during the game. Like once you put a meeple there, they're stuck there.
Right.
So you have to get them back. You either have to capture them yourself or somebody else has to capture them, and then it's actually easier for you to capture them. So I think it's actually a pretty balanced component.
Yeah,
and it's
a pain in the butt to get your workers back. So
exactly.
Somebody takes them, I'm like, okay, phew, now I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's especially if they're stacked up in one spot. It's like, oh, I'm going to get those 5 or 6 guys back. That's pretty good, right? And then it even has a rule in there where if you don't want that person to get their payment for sending your guys to jail, you can pay and get your guys back
Yeah, it's
anyway.
like $5-6 or something.
Yeah,
right?
so you can take, but it's all about like, it's a race like most games, and it's like, do you really want to take the turn to do that? Mm-hmm. Do you want to take the turn to capture somebody's guys? Do you want to take the turn?
It is an action economy game for sure.
Exactly. And so
It kind of feels like the anti-Agricola in a lot of ways too, because it takes worker placement, but there's only, I think, 3 spots on the whole board that are blockable. Right? There's the black market, but there's 3 places there, and then I guess technically, whenever you build something or work on the cathedral, you permanently put a person in a position, which is sort of the end game clock.
Right.
But every other worker place, there's no limit to the amount there, and instead of having like an Agricola where you have like 4 people and that's it, you have a giant pile of meeples. Like I think it's 20 something. Yeah, you start with 20
guys.
And every turn you just plunk one down and you just have like limitless people. But the more times you've gone to each place, the better that place gets, which is when I first read the rulebook, I was like, oh, this is great. Like this is a really fun new addition into the worker placement realm and super easy to teach too.
Yep, it is. It's fun to teach actually. Like,
you don't have to feed. There's also no feeding of your workers.
Yep.
So anti-Agricola in that sense is not. It's not like you have to worry about. You just start chucking. Almost your people are like resources. You're just throwing around there and like they're doing work for you, and someone's capturing them. But you're like, oh, I'll get them back later. No worries. Yep. Let's talk about strategies in this game. What are the 2 sort of ways to win?
Well, I did a little looking on the Geek, and actually it played out in the game that we played this week. That there's an argument that the cathedral building strategy is unbeatable. If somebody focuses that, and there's no person really, and there's not a whole lot you could do to get in a person's way if that's what they're going to do. It's hard to beat. I mean, it's 20 points if you get to the top of that thing. And
there's only one, so each level of the cathedral, less people can go on, and the top one, only one person can. And that 8-point difference between 12 points and 8 and 20 points for the second to last and last position, that's a huge. I mean, this is a game that averages 30, 40 points, maybe something like that.
Yeah, a winning score I feel like is like 40, 45 points in a game that I played. Yeah.
So that's half your score right there, and it's not a massive investment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a little tricky to do, but if the player does it efficiently, also I've heard that like some on one of my groups, there's some there's asymmetrical powers. And your starting character or whatever, your player board, and there's some people that feel those are like pretty wildly unbalanced as well, and I definitely felt that a little bit in the game. I thought, oh, this guy could be pretty strong. I had a strategy that I thought could work, and it didn't play out at all. I think I wound up with like 26 points, which like it wasn't even close to the winning score.
Yeah, so we played with these promo characters that were originally stretch goals for the Kickstarter, and then the BGG store sold them as a promo pack. I think they're sold out now, but they said they're coming back. But it doubles the amount of things in there. But anytime you get Kickstarter goals of more things like that, you always are a little weary that are these going to be balanced? Or no, I'm not surprised that they're not wildly well balanced.
Yeah. That said, it was still that's one of those games where if I lose it, it's still kind of a fun game. Mm-hmm. And again, it is very quick. I just wonder about like now I guess the thing I'm trying to figure out in the game, is there a way that you can actually beat the cathedral strategy? Because the last time I played it was right after I read, people kind of, saying this on BGG. And I did it and I won the game. And I think it was like one of my first wins of the game ever. So I was like, oh, maybe there's something to it. And then now I've seen another example.
I wonder if it's like, if the person who's going cathedral, the other people have to sort of start picking on them.
Yeah, but it's one of those games that's kind of hard to do, and I feel like that would definitely detract from the game if people see that happening.
Because whoever picks on them the most is probably not going to win either.
Exactly, because you're wasting actions to do that, right? One thing that I realized though about it, it's not only that 20 points, it's also the virtue track. Right. Which is something that...
Oh, and those cards you're getting. I forgot. You get these little gift cards that have awesome stuff on them.
Exactly. So you're actually getting virtue and additional stuff every time you build. The virtue track is something that I really enjoy as a mechanic in the game. I think it's very kind of...
It's like the good and evil thing from Mass Effect, kind of, right?
yeah, exactly. And it's... it's like you don't, if you're at the lower end, you don't have to pay as much taxes in the game, and so it's better for you to go to the black market.
Right. But you can't help build the cathedral because you
can't help building the cathedral. But I was going an anti-cathedral building strategy. I just figured I would build, because I was also getting a discount on building from my hand, the cards. So I said if I just use that advantage and just build a lot from my hand, which I think I have seen that in one game. I saw somebody who built like 7 or 8 buildings.
Right.
Because some of the buildings actually give you an additional action or some other type of benefit in the game that's not just in-game scoring. So I think if you get the right buildings, but then the game is, kind of luck dependent on what cards come out and what cards you actually get. And if you're depending on that to beat the cathedral strategy, that doesn't really work.
Have people come up with any house rules to maybe fix it?
Not that I've heard of. I'm sure probably on the Geek they probably have, but I haven't heard of anything yet.
Yeah.
So,
have you played any of the other games from the designer? Any of the North Sea trilogy?
I played the first North Sea game, and I didn't care for it really.
Yeah.
I think I played it like once or twice. But
Raiders, is that the Raiders of the North Sea? I think it's the first one.
Yeah, it just didn't really do it for me. But yeah, first time I played this game, Architects, even with this potential flaw in it, I still think it's a great game, and I really enjoyed playing it. So
yeah, this seems to be the one that's sort of broken out. I mean, this was definitely a big hit from late last year, early this year. I think Kickstarter people all got it at the end of last year, and then it went to retail at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, I think an easy fix could be just lowering that 20 points down to, a more reason. Because what's the level before? You said
12,
it's 8 points. So
I think 12.
Yeah, maybe if it went from like 12 to 16, maybe that might make a difference. But again,
it's true though. You get so many. You also, I mean, getting up that virtue track is at the top of the virtue track is
exactly
8 points or something.
8 points,
so it's like,
and that would have to be tweaked too, I think.
Yeah. And also you get, I mean, maybe you just shouldn't get the reward cards. I mean, with all the extra resources, it's just like, you definitely are getting a lot.
I think it's more about the points, because that was the other thing I really realized in this last game, because I was like, okay, I'll just hang out in the kind of bottom track and get those advantages for going to the black market. But too late in the game, I realized like, oh, I'm getting negative points being at the bottom of the virtue track, and so I got to at least dig myself out to not getting negative points, which I think I finally did. But there was a couple other things that I was trying to do, and we just ran out of actions. Somebody ended the game. So I think, I mean, that one idea I did have, but I feel like that might be broken. If there was a way that you could combat that, like what if you had a character that that turned your negative points on the virtue track into positive points, or even half, like if you're or just didn't give you negative points.
Yeah.
Because with that, it would have been a lot closer. Like I had still negative 4 or 5 points or whatever. That would have got me up to closer to 30.
Yeah.
I just feel like it would have been a little more balanced. So
yeah. Well, I think it's a game you could almost teach to anybody too. I mean, I think it's a pretty good entry medium weight Euro, which I think it's rare to find one that I think Euro gamers will enjoy playing, and also is not a bad game for new players to modern board games.
Yeah.
It's easier to teach and less punishing than most worker placements. There isn't this, well, this is the best spot, and if you're not first player, you're not getting it.
Yep.
You don't have to feed your workers. It takes away all the sort of negative associations people have with worker placement. It's just, here's 20 workers, have fun.
Yep.
Go see what happens out there.
Yep.
You definitely get that exploring feel.
Yeah.
I like the cards a lot. that was the strategy I went. I just tried to I had a character that made picking up new there's people cards and then building cards. The people cards sort of give you better versions of action. So anytime I take wood, I get an extra wood, things like that.
Yeah.
And I had a guy that made those $3 instead of 4. And I could have 6 instead of 5.
Yeah.
Everybody else is capped at 5. So I pushed that really hard, except those don't make you anything. At the end of the game, they're worth nothing. They just hopefully make your actions that much better. But I didn't find that they were, I think I wasted actions getting too many that, if I get this guy every time I go here, it gets better. But did I go there enough to make it worth the action to get the guy?
Right. Right. And I think you had the suggestion too, or somebody did that. Maybe if you got a few points from character cards or assistant cards, then that might help kind of balance things out.
Yeah,
as well.
I was thinking like a Lorenzo Il Magnifico kind of thing, where like if you have a certain amount of a certain type of cards, that becomes a set collection scoring thing. Like you know, if you have 5, you get 20 points. If you have 4, you get 10. Things like that.
Yep. Yeah, because the cathedral player really can't focus much on assistance. They have to pretty much just focus on the cathedral to make it work. So
yeah. Well, overall thoughts?
I like I said, I for some possible flaws in the game, I still think it's very well designed. It's pretty to look at. It's got
the art's great. I really like that artist style.
Yeah, like you said, it's easy to learn. It's easy to play. It's fast turns. I think it lasts the right amount of time, for the type of game that it is. Again, I feel like it's always fun. Like a really clear sign that a game is good for me is, if I enjoy playing it, whether I win or lose,
Absolutely.
And I at least feel like I had a chance to win the game. Even as we get towards the end, and there's a nice tension that builds too as you see those last few meeples on the final line. I like the black market reset mechanic. So yeah, I think overall I just highly recommend the game. It's one that I own now. I have it in my collection.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also cheap as board games go. It's $40 on Amazon or $55 if you're in your FLGS. It's very pretty. It's the kind of game that I think. And also, I mean, I think, honestly, you can teach it and play it with 5 people in 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how many 5-player games I could say that about. Teach and play in 5 hours. If everybody knows how to play, 90 minutes. It's I'm not lukewarm on it at all. I like it. I think I like it more than most of the other people in our group. I feel like I'm not like wildly crazy to play it again. Like it's not like, oh, I can't wait to get to the table again. But it's also like I wouldn't turn a game of it down. I actually that game we had last time was the most enjoyable I've had with it, and I'm excited to play it again. I think I like it at 5. I think there's a little more interactivity. Things get crowded really quickly. It's easier to read the game state of sort of like how people are doing, and and the more people probably might make the cathedral a little more competitive as well.
I think so too.
Which I think with 4 players, you could easily just have 1 person or 2 people focusing on that, and that could run away a little bit. Well, that's our thoughts on Architects of the West Kingdom. Easy to get right now. Some of the games we talk about are in between prints. This one is not. It is everywhere and at good prices. Support your local game shops if you can. And that's it.